The views and opinions expressed on Real Talk with Horace Sheffield are not those of WADL TV 38 or Adele Broadcasting Corporation.
Giving you real talk, real talk, real talk. Take a walk down this path through Detroit, Detroit. This is real talk, real talk, real talk. Real issues straight from the heart. Giving you real talk, real talk, real talk. Take a walk down this path through Detroit, Detroit. This is real talk, real talk, real talk.
Welcome to Real Talk with Reverend Horace Sheffield. I'm your co-host, Paris Simpson, the Executive Director of Powerful Leaders Uniting Generations, Plug Incorporated, and I'm really excited about our show today. I have a wonderful guest with me, Dr. Kanzoni Azabiji, Vice President of the Detroit Recovery Project Incorporated. Hi, Dr. Azabiji.
Hello, Paris. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Great.
Awesome. So Dr. Azabiji is also a board member with Real Michigan, the Recovery Education Advocacy Leadership Incorporated, which is an organization that was founded by my mentor, the late Dr. Calvin Robert Trent, who we miss so much. We're gathered, just to talk a little bit about Dr. Trent and about the recovery community here in Detroit, which you and Dr. Trent have had a huge impact on. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your friend and about your mentor, Dr. Trent. Tell me about how you met Dr. Trent and about some of the work that you guys have done together in the city.
Yes. Thank you for asking. And, I miss Dr. Trent a lot. And as you said, he was my mentor and, a friend. And, he called me his son and a brother. All the different family relations that we built over the years. I first met Dr. Trent in 1984 when I came here on vacation from Europe. I was in medical school the final year, and then I was introduced to him by my brother who was living with him at that time. And so after I finished school in Europe, I came over here and then just formed relations with him and went to Michigan and we built really a very strong bond and he's been, he supported me, to go to school, although I had a scholarship at that time, but he navigated the whole United States system, and helped me navigate how to succeed in this country.
Well, that's the type of guy Dr. Trent was. I mean, just a really giving, loving person who loved people.
Yes.
And loved people so much that he wanted to help heal them.
Yes.
And that's kind of the thing that he was working on here in the city, working on building communities of recovery within Detroit. So in the 90s, he was working as the director of substance abuse at the Detroit Health Department?
Yes. So he joined the Detroit Health Department in the 90s, late 90s. Mm-hmm. And then as he was deputy and then became a director of the Bureau of Substance Abuse. And then I joined the Detroit Health Department as deputy director for the Bureau of Substance Abuse in 2003.
Okay.
So I got to, work with him again.
Wow.
And at that time, he implemented a lot of changes at the Bureau. He implemented managed care. He also started to implement the way that we deliver services.
Yes.
So some of the things when I joined the Bureau of Substance Abuse at that time, we later on changed the name to the Bureau of Substance Abuse Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery to include, the continuum of care.
Okay.
So, we encountered the first issue was that people will wake up early in the morning around 2, 3, 4 a.m. and come to the Hemakifa building 1 and stand there in line until the office will open at 9 a.m.
So they would stand in line from 3 a.m. until 9 a.m. at Herman Kiefer for what exactly?
To get into substance abuse treatment, substance use disorder treatment. That was the old terminology for substance abuse. And we just didn't feel that was the appropriate way. We needed to increase access to services. We understood that when somebody is really looking to get into SUD treatment, that they're ready.
Yes, they're ready
And
at
that's
that
the
time.
time to get them into treatment. So we started implementing some changes. First, we said we implemented a change and a policy that anybody who was there
Was there.
before 9 a.m. had to get in.
Had to get in.
Yeah. So you couldn't just say we'll take. What they used to do was take the first 20 and give the rest tickets to come back.
Okay.
And some of them never came back. So anybody who arrived during the day when the office is open from 9 to 5 had to be served
Had to be served.
and then placed in treatment. The next thing we did was that we wanted people to be able to access services 24/7.
24/7 access to care.
That's right. So
which is
we got
treatment on demand.
that was treatment on demand.
Wow.
Treatment on demand.
So the work that you and Dr. Trent did actually help create and mold treatment on demand here in Detroit.
We did. We created treatment on demand, and we implemented a 24/7 800 number that
Okay.
anybody could call. So we also instituted a policy where people could get into treatment 3 ways.
Okay.
You could come to Hemakifa and get into treatment. You could call the 800 number any day of the day,
Yeah.
anytime, anywhere, and we'll place you in treatment. Or you could go directly to the provider of your choice, and they will call us and tell us that, some John is here and needs treatment, and we'll
that's
put them
so
in.
essential, because before then, people just didn't have the access to be able to get into treatment when they needed it.
Absolutely, people did not get into treatment when they needed it, and so it was really imperative that we change this and make sure that people get into treatment, because once we lose them, they may not come back,
Right.
or they may overdose also, which is very detrimental. So the next thing we did was, instead of paying providers by the number of beds that they had, we changed it to pay them fee for service.
Okay.
So if you saw 10 people, we'll pay for 10 people. If you saw 100 people, we paid you for 100 people.
So that.
So the providers were really, really cooperative.
Yeah,
they worked with us. They increased their capacities in their respective treatment centers. We also implemented electronic health records where providers could enter their information. We did away with all the paper.
So you did away with the paper so providers could enter the health information of their patients. That way it could be shared between maybe providers if necessary.
With the necessary
and definitely
consent.
with, the necessary health department, so that we could have, information on where people were and if they needed placement. So I know another thing that you said that you guys worked on was this idea of recovery support services. Like the idea of the fact that treatment and prevention, there's another step, there's another process of recovery where people may need additional assistance after they get out of treatment, or if a person doesn't choose the pathway of treatment, maybe they have a natural recovery process, a person can get assistance after such. Tell me a little bit about recovery support services and what you and Dr. Trent did to help make sure that that was available here.
Yeah. So we recognized, and we also realized that when people finish treatment, we lost contact with them.
Wow.
And we didn't really know what they were doing, how they were sustaining their recovery, what services they needed. So we found a grant, a SAMHSA grant, and wrote for it, and we were awarded a grant for recovery to develop a recovery support services. We didn't have a blueprint, so we worked with people in recovery. We worked with the providers, and then we started, listening to people in recovery and what their stories and what helped them to succeed and what they needed to do. So we built that, and that was when Dr. Trent hired Andre to run that program. Yeah. And so we really, really set out to make sure that people that finish treatment were continuously being engaged with their peers and also with the Bureau and providers to make sure that we reduce recidivism, people relapsing.
Yeah.
So we learned a lot,
Wow.
and we learned the importance of peers in recovery.
Absolutely.
And so after the grant, we were able to sustain it. And the next step was also to make sure that the peer recovery coaches and specialists got paid, because
Right.
they were doing that on a voluntary manner. They were volunteers, and they were actually working
Wow.
and not just volunteering. So
So, not only did you and Dr. Trent have a significant role in creating what is now peer recovery support services being offered here in the state of Michigan, but also then incentivizing that for the peers who were providing those services to now take that out of their traditional programs of recovery and be able to make a career out of providing that support to their peers and really helping people to sustain recovery.
absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely. Sustaining recovery is very important, because people in recovery are very productive. They are part of our community. They are, leaders in different sectors of businesses, and they contribute a lot to the community. So we wanted to make sure that they are recognized, and we wanted to make sure that people got paid, in order to live.
Thank you.
So we advocated at the state level, and Dr. Trent was really, really at the forefront of this, drafting and crafting policies and strategizing, at the state level. And he was also known nationally and internationally on his efforts and his work in the recovery community. So we were able to get the state to say, well, we'll pay for recovery support services. And so we navigated all the procedures to get that onto the Medicaid reimbursement schedule.
Wow.
From there, we also saw the need for housing, because a lot of folks did not have, housing or had precarious housing because they weren't working or just finished treatment, and also because they did not have, in some instances, good credit to get an apartment.
Right.
So we needed a way whereby they could live for up to about 6 months while they get their stuff together.
Right.
So we were able to get that in place, and it's now called recovery housing.
Wow.
And that really, really helped a lot of folks to be able to just make sure that they can look for a job, reconnect with family, or go to school, or do the things that help them to sustain their recovery, to build their lives and be able to move on.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. A. That's a lot that you guys were able to accomplish, and I'm really excited about all that we'll continue to do to build communities of recovery, like in Dr. Trent's honor, and just because of the fact that the work that he was committed to is so essential and necessary in our community. So I commend you, and I thank you so much for all that you have done and continue to do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm here with Eddie Killing, who is the program administrator for Building Communities of Recovery, which is an initiative, as a collaborative initiative between the Detroit Recovery Project as well as Real Michigan, right?
Correct, correct.
So tell us a little bit about Building Communities of Recovery.
Well, Building Communities of Recovery is a grant that with the initiative of assisting RCOs, Recovery Community Organizations, throughout the 10 regions in Michigan, in the state of Michigan, where we're kind of giving them support to kind of improve their ability to deliver services, as well as assist individuals or individual organizations that are trying to get started as an RCO.
Okay, so there are 10 different behavioral health care regions in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And which region, we're here in region, what is it, 4 or 5? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, in here in Detroit. And what's our region representative? Is it Detroit Wayne?
Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority.
Okay.
Well, they now call themselves Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network.
Okay, yeah, DWIN.
Yes.
DWIN. So And you guys, with building communities of recovery, you would work with like a Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network.
Well, with all the PIHBs
Okay.
throughout the 10 regions,
Yeah.
again, just to offer support and assistance with how they deliver services or strengthening their ability to deliver services.
Awesome. So I know a little bit about some of the stuff that you do at Detroit Recovery Project. You guys are like a peer recovery support organization. You build communities of recovery through recovery coaches.
Recovery coaches, outpatient therapy. We have other different programs like needle exchange. We just added yoga. Yesterday we just started bike riding. So we're
Wow.
doing some health things as well.
Okay. And so the peers that work at the Detroit Recovery Project, these are people that are recovering from substance abuse?
Yes.
Okay.
So most of the organization is probably 80% pure ran.
Wow.
So most of the coaches and therapists do have lived experience.
Okay.
I myself have lived experience. Currently, a little over 10 years clean and sober.
Wow.
Yeah, no mind, mood altering chemicals.
So,
Yeah.
so we, myself as the executive secretary for Families Against Narcotics, representing the city of Detroit, we talk a little bit about recovery often on the show, and we talk about the multiple pathways to recovery. I know you just mentioned that you're 10 years clean and sober, and you say no mood or mind altering substances, which is a certain pathway to recovery. Do you guys at DRP in that reel like explore the different pathways and kind of make sure that people are aware of what they are and how to get in contact with them?
We do. We honor all pathways. We do recognize that people recover many different ways.
Wow.
So, we have 12 steps, NA, AA, faith based. Some people just quit.
So like a natural recovery.
Yes. So, and we do what's harm reduction.
Okay.
So, you want to kind of get the clients to kind of understand what their pathways are. So, yes, we do kind of educate them on the different pathways and kind of find out what pathway works for them.
What works for them?
Yes.
So we're talking about Dr. Calvin Trent. We're talking about him because he's meant so much to the both of us
Yes.
personally and so much to the recovery community of Detroit. Would you just like to share maybe a little bit about your relationship with Dr. Trent or one of your fond memories of him?
Many fond memories. Many fond memories. Relationship was like a grandfather, father, my therapist, my friend. Doc was the reason when I first came into this profession why I stayed in it.
Really?
Yes. He would always encourage me to stick in there. Doc never seen, he always picked the silver lining. He found the silver lining in everything.
Yeah.
I don't care how negative you come to him, he's going to find the bright side. And, that's what I remember about Doc the most. I did hear you talking earlier about how he started this recovery support services.
Yeah.
One of the great things about Doc, he was a teacher.
Yes.
He was a teacher. He was an encourager, and he wanted you to learn. He wanted you to be the best you could be. And one of the things I learned about Doc when he first got there, or when I first got up under him, he taught me about why the recovery support services was important.
Yeah.
And Dr. Azabizi touched on it. But one of the things he would tell me that probably 80% of individuals, if they don't connect to a community agency, within 30 days they will return to active addiction.
Wow.
That was the driving force, he would always say, behind developing that recovery support services. So I can go on about, the teachings of Doc, and awesome, man. Awesome. The community is definitely going to miss Dr. Trent.
Yeah, I'd agree. So when you say that he was like a grandfather and like a therapist, those are like my exact thoughts about Dr. Trent personally, And then you mentioned, that if you are not connected with a recovery community organization or connected with some form of recovery support services, like within 30 days, that you are likely to relapse, 80% likely to relapse. Well, another thing that Dr. Trent taught me was that as a person with a mental health disorder, I was 80% more likely to also have a co-occurring substance use disorder. And so we would talk very often about my use of substances. We would talk very often about my mental health and whether or not it would ever be possible for me to be a person just living with the condition of bipolar disorder instead of, bipolar disorder kind of like taking over me and what I was able to do. And he was always so encouraging in the fact that, recovery was possible for everybody.
Yes.
He's like, Paris,
Yes.
Everybody, you, the guy down the street, the guy in my neighborhood at Palmer
Anybody.
Park
Yes.
that I help, everybody, it is possible for anyone. And that was one of, the greatest lessons that I think I learned from Dr. Trent was that literally if you want recovery and if we continue to build communities of recovery in our neighborhoods and around, that it would be possible for anybody who is seeking to actually receive the support that they need.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yes.
I love that about him and about the work that you guys are doing at Real. So tell me a little bit about Real Michigan, how people can get connected with Real Michigan. I know that I'm a board member and that you work very closely with the organization. So tell me about how a person might get connected with Real if they wanted to know about what Real is doing.
Well, right now, Real Michigan has a Facebook page that's up.
Okay.
REAL stands for Recovery, Education, Advocacy, and Leadership. Currently, we are now putting together a web page.
Yeah.
That will be up and running, in fact, today.
Okay. So what's the web address? realmichigan.org still?
Yes, realmichigan.org. Doing collaboration work with B Corps, Building Communities of Recovery. We do have a town hall meeting coming up July 16th.
Oh, this is so exciting.
Yes, from 6 to 8. The presenter will be Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson.
Yes, and he's presenting on the effects of COVID-19 to the recovery process.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be very impactful.
Yes,
This is
it'll
going to
be
be
awesome.
great.
Yes.
So I'm very familiar with Real Michigan town hall meetings and your leadership conferences that you guys do every year for people with substance use disorder and co-occurring disorders. Last year you did a couple leadership conferences. I know one was in like Gaylord,
Yes.
Michigan, and you did one in Detroit on the access to recovery support and treatment. You had some really cool people come down from the state to talk about access around the state of Michigan. How is this one? Well, Mike Johnson is a huge deal, right? So guys who don't know about Mike in the recovery community, even though we're talking about Doc, Mike has, done really great work with people in recovery, helping them to identify different pathways and really break into kind of seeing what was the root cause of their substance use disorder. So looking at COVID-19 and then July being Minority Mental Health Month, I love the idea of doing something surrounding how, COVID-19 has impacted people with substance use disorder in this time of mental health awareness. That's great. It's very exciting for Real to be doing that. So where is it going to be hosted at? Is it a virtual event?
So it's going to be face-to-face
Okay.
at 1145 West Grand Boulevard.
Okay.
That's Detroit, Michigan, 48208, as well as virtually
Okay. So it'll be a virtual presentation
and face-to-face.
and something that a person can come in. Could you register somewhere? Where could we
Yes,
register
you're
to
going
attend?
to be registering on Eventbrite.
Yeah.
That information will go out, as a matter of fact, today.
Okay.
You'll be able to log into Eventbrite and register for that.
Wow. Okay. So just talking a little bit about Dr. Trent and you and I and the relationship that we had with Dr. Trent working with Real Michigan together. Eddie is actually someone who I've worked very closely with. I worked at the Detroit Recovery Project for a number of years, and we worked under the tutelage of Dr. Trent. Literally spent the last year and a half of my life within like 2 feet of him.
Yes.
I had the blessed opportunity to like spend every day with the guy and learn so much about the offices of recovery-oriented systems of care and the necessity for treatment on demand and the necessity for people to be aware of co-occurring disorders and how we create, a system where people can be incentivized for doing recovery work and just why it was important for us to care guys on the corner and what was going on with them and why we weren't compassionate enough and how to make, our authority more empathetic toward the needs of people with substance use, of all of those things that, we were able to learn. And you knew Dr. Trent even longer than I. I only got to spend 3 years with him, but you like nearly 10 or 11 now.
Yes.
What would you say is like, if you could, and I don't want to put too much pressure on you to choose the greatest one, but what would you say would be like one of the best lessons that you learned working with Dr. Trent over the last year?
Well, again, many great lessons from Dr. Trent, but one stands out right now as we speak is the one of self-care.
Okay.
So I talked a little bit about him being my therapist, and the reason that was because of my self-care.
Yeah.
He actually taught us a class, all the recovery coaches, employees at Detroit Recovery Project. We had a weekly class with Dr. Trent solely on self-care.
Wow.
And how important it is for those who deliver the services to be able to take care of themselves as well. That we need therapists. Most of us need a recovery coach. We need to be able to have somewhere, an outlet where we can go and talk about our issues and our problems. And Dr. Trent was that for me.
Wow.
I would go in and be on his couch and talk with him and spill everything out to him. And he helped me so much in my recovery process.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I mean, honestly, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Trent was a clinical psychologist by trade education. And he was just a wonderful guy in the fact that he was like your shrink without you even knowing that he was your shrink. Like, we were talking and he was like, oh, Paris, I think you'll be able to get out of treatment soon. And now that I sit back and I'm like looking, I feel like he was always preparing me to be able to kind of do this on my own and not really on my own with the people that were around actually actively doing the work with me, but just the fact that, he always taught me, one person doesn't stop anything. Right. You can continue on. You have to continue on, and what we're doing is bigger than us, right? So the mission of actually making sure that people in recovery have access to recovery, that they have access to the supports that they need to continue on in that process is more important than, really anything else. The minor things that might attempt to get in the way of that.
Had a great love for all people. That was Dr. Trent. He just loved people. He was a people lover. Yeah,
truly. And I'm going to miss him. Yes. I'm going to miss him so much because I miss him daily. Yes. Honestly, it's been difficult, but because of the person that he was, because of how prepared he was, because of how jubilant he was, and the outlook that he had on life itself, he almost was like kind of Buddhist in his belief practices, that everything was just continuing and what would continue to go on as long as we spoke positively, we spoke of him, and we had right intention, right? So I received from Kim Trent, and I hope she sees this episode, and we continue to do conversations with her and other folks about recovery in Detroit, and about if we're talking about recovery, and we're talking about recovery in the city of Detroit, we're talking about Dr. Trent, right? So if Kim sees this, I want her and everyone to know that the love and the respect that people have for Dr. Calvin R. Trent.
Detroit, this is real talk, real issues straight from the heart, giving you real talk, Take a walk down this path through Detroit, this is real talk, Hello, I'm Reverend Horace Sheffield.